The gilded cage, Darius Blackwood, stood on the marble terrace of the Metropolitan Museum, his champagne glass untouched as he gazed over the glittering cityscape. At 32, he commanded a tech empire worth billions, yet tonight felt like every other night, hollow, despite being surrounded by Manhattan's elite at the most exclusive charity gala of the season. "Another successful evening, Mr. Blackwood," his assistant whispered, approaching with the evening's donation tally. "We've raised over $3 million for the Children's Literacy Foundation." Darius nodded absently, his dark eyes scanning the crowd through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Success had become routine, predictable as his morning coffee or the stack of contracts waiting on his mahogany desk. He'd built everything his father had dreamed of and more, yet something gnawed at him, a persistent emptiness that no amount of achievement could fill. The auction had ended, and guests mingled in their designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, their laughter echoing off the museum's ancient walls. Darius recognized most faces, board members, politicians, society figures who moved in carefully choreographed circles. He'd mastered this world, learned to speak its language of power and influence, but tonight it felt suffocating. "Darius," Senator Morrison's booming voice cut through his thoughts. "Magnificent turnout. Your foundation's impact on education is remarkable." "Thank you, Senator," Darius replied automatically, shaking hands with practiced charm. "Though I believe we're just scratching the surface of what's possible." As Morrison launched into familiar political rhetoric, Darius's attention wandered. That's when he saw her, a woman in an elegant emerald dress, moving gracefully between the exhibits. Something about her posture, the way she carried herself, seemed familiar yet impossible. His heart stuttered as she turned slightly, revealing a profile that haunted his dreams. No, it couldn't be. The woman possessed an air of quiet confidence that commanded respect without demanding attention. Her hair, once hidden beneath a simple cap, now cascaded in rich auburn waves over her shoulders. She spoke with animated intelligence to a small group gathered around a Renaissance painting, her hands gesturing expressively as she explained the historical context. "Excuse me," Darius murmured to the senator, already moving across the marble floor. Each step felt weighted with 7 years of buried regret. The woman turned as he approached, and time seemed to fold in on itself. Those same striking green eyes that had once looked at him with such hope, such love, now regarded him with cool professionalism. "Celeste," he breathed, her name feeling foreign and familiar on his lips. "Mr. Blackwood," she replied evenly, extending a manicured hand for a brief handshake. "I should have expected to see you here." Gone was the shy housemaid who had once gleaned his penthouse, who had brought him coffee each morning with a secret smile. In her place stood a woman who clearly belonged in this rarefied world, poised, successful, untouchable. I didn't know you were in New York," he managed, struggling to reconcile the past with the present. "I've been here for 3 years, Celeste replied, her voice betraying nothing. "My company has been quite busy with several high-profile projects." "Your company?" A small smile played at her lips, not the warm, genuine expression he remembered, but something more guarded. "Rivers Interior Design. Perhaps you've heard of us? We're handling the renovation of the Grandview Hotel chain." Darius felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The Grandview project was worth $50 million, a contract his own investment firm had considered. The woman he'd once dismissed as unsuitable for his world now moved in circles that rivaled his own. "That's impressive," he said quietly. "Thank you." She glanced at the platinum watch adorning her wrist. "If you'll excuse me, I have an early morning." As she turned to leave, Darius found his voice. "Celeste, wait. Could we talk?" She paused, her expression unreadable, I think we said everything that needed saying 7 years ago, don't you? The words hit him like a physical blow, carrying the weight of his greatest mistake. Echoes of yesterday, Celeste Rivers maintained her composure until the elevator doors closed behind her, then finally allowed her mask to slip. Her reflection in the polished steel showed a successful woman in designer clothes. But beneath the surface, her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. 7 years had passed since she'd last seen Darius Blackwood, and she'd foolishly believed herself immune to his presence. The limousine her company had arranged waited outside, and as Manhattan's lights blurred past the tinted windows, Celeste's mind drifted back to a different time when she was a different person entirely. 7 years earlier, she had been Celeste Morrison, a 22-year-old trying to work her way through night school while cleaning the penthouses of Manhattan's wealthy elite. The Blackwood residence had been her most prestigious assignment, a sprawling apartment overlooking Central Park, where every surface gleamed and every piece of furniture cost more than most people's annual salary. She remembered the first morning. She'd encountered Darius in his kitchen, standing barefoot in silk pajama pants, his dark hair tousled from sleep. He'd looked up from his coffee with surprise. Most clients never acknowledged the cleaning staff's existence. "You're new," he'd said, not unkindly. "Yes, sir. Celeste Morrison." "I'll try not to disturb you." But disturb him she had, though not in the way she'd feared. Over months of careful morning encounters, they'd developed an easy rapport. He'd ask about her studies, interior design with a minor in business, and she'd find excuses to linger, drawn to his intelligence and the loneliness she sensed beneath his corporate armor. The transformation had been gradual. Professional courtesy had evolved into genuine conversation, then into something deeper. Darius would leave architecture books on the counter for her to borrow. She'd bring pastries from her favorite bakery, claiming she'd bought too many. They'd begun taking coffee together on her break, talking about everything from art to their shared love of old movies. The night everything changed, Darius had returned from a particularly brutal board meeting. His usual composure cracked. Celeste had found him on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. "Rough day?" she'd asked quietly. "They want me to marry the Pemberton girl," he'd said without preamble. "Strategic alliance, they call it, good for both families' business interests." "And what do you want?" He'd turned to her then, his eyes holding an intensity that made her breath catch. "I want something real, someone who sees me, not my net worth." The kiss that followed had been inevitable, tender and desperate. In that moment, Celeste had allowed herself to believe that love could conquer the vast gulf between their worlds. The limousine stopped at her building, jerking Celeste back to the present. Her penthouse apartment, earned through her own talent and determination, felt cold after the evening's emotional ambush. She poured herself a glass of wine and settled onto her cream-colored sofa, forcing herself to confront the memories she'd spent years burying. Those stolen weeks had been magical. Darius would send his staff away early so they could have dinner together, talking late into the night about their dreams and fears. He'd shown her architectural plans for affordable housing, projects he wanted to fund, passionate about making a difference beyond mere profit. She'd shared her vision of creating beautiful spaces that felt like home, not just showpieces. When she discovered she was pregnant, terror and joy had warred in her chest. She'd rehearsed the conversation 100 times, imagining his reaction. Surprise, perhaps, but ultimately happiness at the prospect of their future together. The reality had been devastating. "Pregnant," Darius had repeated, his face draining of color. "Are you certain?" "Yes, I know this is unexpected, but—" "Unexpected?" He'd run his hands through his hair, pacing his office like a caged animal. "Celeste, this is impossible. The merger with Pemberton Industries hinges on my engagement to Victoria. My father's worked toward this for years." I'm not asking you to choose, she'd said quietly, though her heart was breaking. I just thought you should know. What do you want from me? The question had been sharp, defensive. Nothing. Everything. I don't know. Tears had threatened, but she'd held them back. I love you, Darius. I thought maybe you loved me too. The silence that followed had been answer enough. Celeste, he'd finally said, his voice carefully controlled. What we had was pleasant, but it was never going to be permanent. You must have known that. Pleasant. The word had shattered something vital inside her. I see. She'd straightened, her shoulders drawing on reserves of dignity she hadn't known she possessed. Then I suppose there's nothing more to discuss. I can arrange for a generous settlement, he'd offered, reaching for his checkbook. Make sure you're comfortable, that the child has everything. Don't. The word had come out harder than intended. Don't you dare try to buy your way out of this. She'd left that night, taking only her personal belongings and her wounded pride. The check he'd tried to force on her remained torn into pieces on his marble floor. Now, 7 years later, Celeste sat in her own marble-floored apartment, successful beyond her wildest dreams. She'd built her empire through talent, determination, and the burning need to prove she was worth more than Darius Blackwood had believed. Every contract won, every client satisfied, every accolade earned, had been a small victory against the voice in her head that whispered she wasn't good enough for his world. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and her heart skipped when she saw his name. After all these years, he still had her number. I know I have no right to ask, but please, one conversation, I owe you that much. Celeste stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations were 7 years too late. The envelope of truth. Marcus Rivers bounced excitedly in the back seat of his mother's Tesla as they pulled up to the prestigious Whitmore Academy. At 6 years old, he possessed an insatiable curiosity that both delighted and exhausted Celeste, his quick mind constantly processing the world around him with an intensity that reminded her painfully of someone else. Mom, did you know that butterflies taste with their feet? Marcus announced, his dark eyes, so achingly familiar, sparkling with enthusiasm as he clutched his science project about monarch migration patterns. I did not know that, Celeste replied, though she'd heard this particular fact at least a dozen times this week. She adjusted his small tie, a miniature version of the professional attire that had become her armor. Remember what we talked about during your presentation? Speak clearly, make eye contact, and don't use words that are too big for the other. Kids, Marcus recited dutifully, then grinned. But Mrs. Patterson says I can use scientific terminology with her. Celeste's heart clenched. Marcus had inherited more than just his father's striking features and keen intelligence. He'd also developed that same unconscious arrogance, the assumption that everyone around him should naturally keep up with his accelerated thought processes. The difference was that Marcus's confidence came from pure 6-year-old enthusiasm rather than privilege and power. Your presentation will be wonderful, sweetheart. I'll be watching from the back. As Marcus scampered toward the school building, his backpack bouncing against his small frame, Celeste remained in the car for a moment longer. Last night's encounter with Darius had shattered her carefully constructed peace, bringing back memories she'd worked so hard to bury. Worse, it had awakened questions she'd never been able to fully silence. Had she been wrong to keep Marcus's existence a secret? The rational part of her mind provided the same answers it had for years. Darius had made his choice clear that devastating night 7 years ago. He'd called their relationship pleasant and reached for his checkbook, as if their love and their child could be reduced to a financial transaction. She'd protected Marcus from that coldness, raised him to believe his worth came from his character and achievements, not his bank account. But watching Marcus now, surrounded by classmates whose parents included senators, celebrities, and corporate titans, Celeste sometimes wondered if she'd robbed him of something important. Not money. She'd built her own fortune and could provide for his every need, but the simple knowledge of where he'd come from. Her phone rang, interrupting her brooding thoughts. Rivers Interior Design, Celeste speaking. Ms. Rivers, this is Janet from Whitmore Academy's front office. Could you come in for a moment? There's been a small incident with Marcus. Celeste's blood ran cold. Is he hurt? No, nothing like that. He's perfectly fine, well, it's better if we discuss this in person. 20 minutes later, Celeste sat in the principal's office, while Marcus fidgeted in the chair beside her, his earlier excitement replaced by an expression she recognized, the same stubborn set to his jaw that Darius wore when confronted with something he didn't want to accept. Principal Harrison, a kind woman in her 50s, leaned forward with practiced diplomacy. Marcus is an exceptional student, as you know. His teachers consistently praise his academic abilities. But, Celeste prompted, today during sharing time, Marcus told the class that his father was too important and busy to attend school events, which is why he never comes. When his teacher gently asked about this, Marcus became quite insistent that his father runs a big company that helps people and travels constantly for work. Celeste's stomach dropped. She'd never told Marcus any such thing. I see. The concerning, in part, Principal Harrison continued carefully, is that Marcus seems to have developed quite an elaborate fantasy about his father's life and work. While imagination is normal for children, this level of creative storytelling about a parent's absence is something we like to address early. Marcus crossed his arms defensively. It's not a story. My dad is important. He just can't visit because he's helping lots of people. Sweetheart, Celeste said gently, remember what we've talked about. It's just you and me, and that's perfectly fine. But everyone else has dads, Marcus shot back, his voice carrying a hurt that made Celeste's heart ache. Tommy's dad teaches him baseball. Sarah's dad helps with her math homework. Why can't I have that too? The drive home was quiet. Marcus, staring out the window with the contemplative expression he wore when processing complex emotions. Celeste's mind raced, replaying every conversation, every moment when her son had asked about his father. She'd always deflected gently, explaining that some families look different, that love came in many forms. Clearly, that hadn't been enough. That evening, after Marcus had reluctantly gone to bed following 3 stories and 2 glasses of water, Celeste stood in her home office, staring at the locked file cabinet in the corner. Inside, beneath insurance documents and business contracts, lay a manila envelope she hadn't opened in years. With trembling fingers, she retrieved it and spread its contents across her mahogany desk. Birth certificate with father unknown, listed, in stark black ink, a deliberate choice to protect Marcus from future disappointment. Hospital photographs from the day he was born, when she'd been utterly alone but overwhelmed with love for the tiny person who'd instantly become her entire world. Medical records documenting Marcus's extraordinary early development, school reports chronicling his advanced academic abilities and social challenges, and at the bottom, a single photograph she'd never been able to bring herself to destroy. Darius, laughing at something she'd said during one of their stolen evenings together, his face relaxed and genuinely happy in a way she'd never seen before or since. The resemblance between father and son was undeniable. The same dark hair that refused to lie flat, the same intense eyes that seemed to see everything, the same unconscious elegance in their movements. But where Marcus's expressions held pure joy and curiosity, Darius had carried the weight of expectations and disappointment that came with his world. Celeste picked up her phone, then set it down again. She deleted Darius's text without responding, but his words echoed in her mind. I know I have no right to ask, but please, one conversation. I owe you that much. Maybe he did owe her something. Maybe they both owed Marcus something. Her fingers found his contact information before she could second-guess herself further. But instead of calling, she composed a text message. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Bryant Park, southeast corner. Come alone. See, the response came within minutes. Thank you. I'll be there. Dee Celeste gathered the photographs and documents, sealing them back in their envelope. Tomorrow, she would make a choice that would change everything, not just for her and Darius, but for the brilliant, curious little boy sleeping down the hall who deserved to know the truth about where he came from, even if that truth might break all their hearts. Bridges built on forgiveness. Helena Blackwood found her brother pacing his office like a caged wolf, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled after a sleepless night. As the progressive black sheep of the Blackwood family, Helena had spent years watching Darius suffocate under their father's expectations, but she'd never seen him this raw, this vulnerable. "You look terrible," she observed, settling into the leather chair across from his desk with characteristic directness. "Thank you for the astute observation," Darius muttered, running his hands through his hair. "Did you come here just to critique my appearance?" Helena studied her older brother with the practiced eye of a social worker who'd spent 4 years helping fractured families rebuild. Despite their 7-year age gap, they'd grown closer since she'd started her career working with underprivileged children, work that had horrified their father but earned Darius's quiet respect. "I came because your assistant called me. Apparently, you've cancelled every meeting today and keep staring out the window like a lovesick teenager." She leaned forward, her voice gentling. "What happened at the gala last night?" Darius stopped pacing, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "I saw her, Helena, Celeste. After 7 years, she was there, and she's—" He struggled for words. "She's become everything I was too blind to see she already was." "The housemaid you were involved with?" Helena had heard whispers about Darius's past relationship, though he'd never discussed it directly. "The one who disappeared." "She didn't disappear. I drove her away." The admission came out harsh, self-recriminating. "I was so concerned about father's expectations, about the merger with Pemberton Industries, that I threw away the only real relationship I'd ever had." Helena watched as her brother moved to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the Manhattan skyline. She'd seen this pattern before in her work, successful, powerful individuals who'd sacrificed everything meaningful for societal approval, only to realize too late what they'd lost. And now she's back. She's built an empire, Helena. River's interior design. She's the woman behind half the luxury renovations in the city. She was at the gala as an equal, not as someone beneath my station. His voice cracked on the last words. "You never thought she was beneath your station, didn't I?" Darius turned to face her, his dark eyes haunted. "I reached for my checkbook, Helena. When she told me she was pregnant, I tried to pay her off like she was some kind of problem to be solved." The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Helena felt her breath catch. "Pregnant? I have a child somewhere in this world, and I don't even know if it's a son or daughter. I don't know their name, their birthday, whether they're healthy or happy or—" He slumped into his chair, suddenly looking older than his 32 years. "What kind of man does that make me?" Helena had worked with enough absent fathers to know the answer, but she also understood that people could change, could grow beyond their worst mistakes. The brother sitting before her bore little resemblance to the cold, corporate-minded man who'd prioritized merger deals over human hearts. "It makes you human," she said quietly. "It makes you someone who made a terrible mistake when he was 25. And scared. I'm meeting her this afternoon. I don't even know what I'm going to say." Helena stood, moving to the small bar cart where Darius kept his expensive whiskey. Instead, She poured 2 glasses of water, setting one in front of him. "You're going to listen, really listen, not just wait for your turn to talk. You're going to accept whatever she tells you without trying to fix it or control it or buy your way out of it. And if she won't let me meet my child, then you'll respect that decision," Helena said firmly. "Because this isn't about what you want anymore, Darius. It's about what's best for a child you walked away from." That afternoon, Helena found herself thinking about her brother as she reviewed case files at the East Harlem Community Center where she worked. The irony wasn't lost on her. While Darius had rejected his own child, she spent her days fighting for children whose fathers had done the same thing. The difference was that most of her clients couldn't afford to build walls of lawyers and money around their guilt. Her phone buzzed with a text from Darius. Meeting went as expected. "I deserve her anger. But Helena, I have a son. His name is Marcus, and he's brilliant and beautiful, and I've missed 6 years of his life." Helena smiled despite herself. Trust her brother to fall in love with a child he'd never met based on nothing more than a mother's proud descriptions and a few photographs. The follow-up text arrived an hour later. "She's agreed to let me try to earn the right to meet him." "I don't know where to start," Helena did. Over the following weeks, she watched her brother transform in ways she'd never thought possible. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms with ruthless efficiency now spent hours researching child development, reading parenting books, and learning about Marcus's interests with the dedication of a scholar. "Did you know 6-year-olds can understand complex scientific concepts if you present them correctly?" Darius asked one evening over dinner at Helena's modest apartment. He'd traded his usual 5-star restaurant for her cramped kitchen table, seemingly unconscious of the difference. "I work with 6-year-olds every day," Helena reminded him, amused by his newfound expertise in child psychology. "But Marcus isn't just any 6-year-old. Celeste says he's reading at a 4th-grade level and building complex structures with engineering toys. He wants to be an architect who designs sustainable buildings that help the environment." "He sounds like his father," Helena observed. Darius went quiet, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Do you think I have any right to want that, to want him to be like me?" "I think you have the right to want to know him," Helena said carefully. "But Darius, he's not a miniature version of you. He's his own person, shaped by 6 years of life without you. If you go into this expecting him to fill some void in your life, you'll both be disappointed." Her brother nodded slowly, absorbing the gentle rebuke. "Celeste wants to see proof that I've changed before she'll consider letting me meet him." "And have you changed?" Darius was quiet for a long moment, staring at his reflection in the dark window. "I used to think success meant having more than everyone else. More money, more power, more control. But sitting across from Celeste yesterday, seeing what she'd built through her own talent and determination, I realized I've been living in a gilded cage, inheriting everything and earning nothing that truly mattered. So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to prove to her that I can be the man she once believed I was. The man Marcus deserves as a father." His voice strengthened with resolve. "I'm going to earn my place in their lives, not buy it." Helena reached across the table to squeeze her brother's hand. For the first time in years, she saw hope in his eyes. Not the brittle confidence of corporate success, but something deeper and more genuine. "Then you'd better get started," she said softly. "You have 6 years of trust to rebuild." New beginnings. 3 months had passed since that first painful conversation in Bryant Park, and Marcus Rivers stood at his bedroom window, watching a familiar black sedan pull up to their building. His heart hammered with nervous excitement as he smoothed down his unruly dark hair, a habit he'd unconsciously inherited from his father. "Mom, he's here!" Marcus called, his voice carrying the mixture of anticipation and uncertainty that had colored their household for weeks. Celeste appeared in his doorway, elegant as always, but softer somehow, wearing the gentle smile she reserved only for him. "Are you ready for today, sweetheart?" Marcus nodded solemnly, then broke into the grin that never failed to melt her heart. "I finished my volcano project last night. Do you think he'll like it?" "I think he'll be amazed by how brilliant you are," Celeste said truthfully, kneeling to adjust his small blazer. "But remember what we talked about. He's still learning how to be a dad, and it's okay if things feel weird at first," Marcus recited, then tilted his head with that thoughtful expression that reminded her so painfully of Darius. "Mom, what if he doesn't like me?" The question pierced her heart. Over the past months, she'd watched Darius prove himself in ways she'd never expected. He'd shown up to every meeting precisely on time, listened without interrupting, and asked thoughtful questions about Marcus's interests and needs. He'd donated quietly to Marcus's school, funding a new science lab without seeking recognition. Most importantly, he'd respected every boundary she'd set, never pushing for more contact than she was comfortable allowing. But Marcus didn't know any of that. To him, Darius was still an abstract concept, the father he'd imagined for so long finally made real. "Oh, sweetheart," Celeste pulled him into a gentle hug. "He's going to love you. How could he not?" The elevator ride down to the lobby felt endless. Marcus bounced on his toes, clutching his science fair project while firing off rapid questions. Does he really design buildings that help the environment? Elena showed me pictures of the community center he funded. It has solar panels and a rooftop garden. Do you think he'd want to see my drawings of sustainable houses? Mrs. Patterson says I have natural architectural instincts. Celeste smiled, despite her nervousness. Helena Blackwood had become an unexpected ally, serving as a bridge between the adults, while Marcus remained unaware of the careful negotiations surrounding this meeting. Helena's warmth and genuine care for children had helped ease some of Celeste's concerns about the Blackwood family influence. The lobby doors opened, and there stood Darius, but not the polished corporate executive from the gala. This version wore dark jeans and a soft blue sweater, his usually perfect hair slightly tousled, as if he'd run his hands through it nervously. When he saw Marcus, his entire face transformed with wonder and barely contained emotion. "Hello, Marcus," Darius said softly, crouching down to the boy's eye level. "I'm Darius. I've been looking forward to meeting you for a very long time." Marcus studied his father with solemn intensity, taking in the familiar dark eyes and strong jawline. "You look like me," he announced with 6-year-old directness. "I was thinking the same thing," Darius replied, his voice slightly hoarse. "Your mom tells me you're interested in architecture and marine biology and renewable energy and space exploration," Marcus rattled off enthusiastically. "But today I want to show you my volcano. It's not just any volcano. It demonstrates how geothermal energy works." As they walked toward Central Park, Celeste hung back slightly, watching the tentative interaction between father and son. Darius listened with genuine fascination as Marcus explained his project, asking questions that showed he'd done his homework about child development and age-appropriate science concepts. "The really cool part," Marcus was saying, his small hand gesturing animatedly, "is that Iceland gets almost all their electricity from geothermal power. They pump water into the ground where it gets heated by magma, then use the steam to generate electricity. It's completely renewable." "That's incredible," Darius replied, and Celeste could hear the authentic amazement in his voice. "Have you thought about how we might use geothermal energy in New York City?" Marcus's face lit up. "Actually, yes. I've been researching ground source heat pumps. They're not exactly the same as geothermal power plants, but they use the Earth's consistent underground temperature to heat and cool buildings more efficiently than traditional systems." Darius stopped walking, staring at his son with undisguised awe. "You're 6 years old." 6 3/4, Marcus corrected seriously. "Mom says I have an unusual brain, but that just means I think about things differently than other kids." "Your mom is right," Darius said quietly, glancing at Celeste with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Thinking differently is a gift." At the park, they found Helena waiting at their designated spot with a picnic blanket and basket. She hugged Marcus enthusiastically. They'd become fast friends during her supervised visits, then greeted Celeste and Darius with warm but watchful eyes. "Did you bring the surprise we talked about?" Helena asked Marcus conspiratorially. "Oh!" Marcus dug into his backpack and pulled out a carefully wrapped package. "I made something for you," he told Darius shyly. "Mom helped, but I did most of it myself." Inside the wrapping was a hand-drawn blueprint of a fantastical building that somehow managed to be both childlike in its imagination and sophisticated in its understanding of architectural principles. Solar panels covered the roof, wind turbines perched on the corners, and detailed annotations in Marcus's careful handwriting explained each sustainable feature. "It's a community center for kids who don't have nice places to play," Marcus explained. "Helena told me you built one in her neighborhood, so I thought maybe you'd like to see my ideas." Darius stared at the drawing for a long moment, his throat working visibly. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Marcus, this is the most beautiful building design I've ever seen. Would you like to help me turn this into a real building someday?" "Really?" Marcus's face exploded with joy. "You'd really want to build my design?" "I would be honored to build your design," Darius said solemnly, and Celeste realized he meant every word. As the afternoon progressed, the initial awkwardness gave way to something warmer. Marcus demonstrated his volcano with scientific precision, beaming when Darius asked intelligent follow-up questions. They discussed everything from renewable energy to space exploration, and Celeste found herself marveling at how naturally they connected despite their years apart. "Mom," Marcus said suddenly, tugging on her sleeve, "can Darius come to my science fair next week? I want to show him off to the other kids." The innocent request hit both adults like a physical blow. Celeste saw the hope that flared in Darius's eyes, quickly tempered by uncertainty as he waited for her response. "If he'd like to come," she said carefully, "then yes." "I would love that more than anything," Darius said quietly, his gaze moving between Marcus and Celeste. "If you're sure." As the sun began to set over Central Park, casting golden light across their small gathering, Marcus curled up against Darius's side with the trusting ease of childhood. The sight of her son's dark head resting against his father's shoulder while they discussed the constellations appearing in the evening sky made Celeste's breath catch. "Thank you," Darius said softly, speaking to her while Marcus dozed against his chest, "for giving me this chance, for raising him to be so extraordinary, for being brave enough to trust me again." "Don't thank me yet," Celeste replied, but her voice held warmth rather than warning. "This is just the beginning." "I know," he said, his hand gentle on Marcus's sleeping form, "but it's the best beginning I could have asked for." Helena caught Celeste's eye and smiled, packing up their picnic with quiet efficiency. As they prepared to leave, Marcus stirred sleepily. "Darius," he mumbled, "will you come back tomorrow?" "If your mom says it's okay," Darius replied carefully. Marcus looked at Celeste with drowsy hope. "Can he, Mom? Please?" Looking at her son's expectant face, then at Darius's careful expression of restrained longing, Celeste felt something shift inside her chest, the last wall of resentment finally crumbling. "Yes," she said simply. "He can come back tomorrow." As they walked home together, not quite a family yet, but something new and fragile and full of possibility, Celeste allowed herself to hope that maybe, after 7 years of careful solitude, They were finally ready to build something beautiful together. The future stretched ahead of them, uncertain but bright with promise, like Marcus's architectural dreams made of sustainable materials and powered by renewable love.